We're going to be talking this morning about performance pressure and people in hospitality, looking at how we fuel ourselves in terms of our bodies and our minds. And you'll be pleased to know that I'm not doing all the talking this morning. We have three incredible guests who are going to be answering my really tough questions. Are they tough? They're tough. Okay, so if I could ask you each to introduce yourselves, because you'll probably do a better job. Sean, we're going to start with yourself, please, if you could introduce.
Yeah, so obviously I'm Sean Wrest. I'm head chef of a restaurant called Avon in Preston, like a little 3-rosette restaurant. Before that I was head chef of a place called Roots in York, where I won, between the team we won York's first Michelin star in the history. Before that I sort of worked at the Black Swan and stuff, so yeah, so fine dining predominantly, so chefing is my background.
Can we just have a round of applause as well for the first Michelin star? Great work. Thank you. And Philip, we've shared a panel already. I'm looking forward to picking more of your knowledge today. If you could introduce yourself as well, please.
I was restricted last time. My name's Philip Tanswell. So I'm the managing director of Cornish Sea Salt, sort of engineering background, so more from the technical side, but from the point of innovation, electrolytes, salt. They affectionately call me the salt geek. So I know more about salt than people probably should do. But my sort of my role as MD is obviously the usual MD stuff, but it's also giving that knowledge out to people about why different salts do different things and how they work and the effect on the bodies and the effect on food and effect on flavour. So sort of taste engineering, if you like, is my sort of skill, if you like.
Exactly. And honestly, if you don't know about salt, by the time you finish today, your minds will be so blown. So yeah, looking forward to delving into that. Thank you. And finally, Julie as well.
Yeah, so I'm Julie Robinson. I'm Director of People and Culture here at Edgbaston Park Hotel. My background is I studied psychology and business psychology, and then pretty much went straight into HR, having left university. Worked a little bit in the corporate sector and then moved into charitable and the museum sector, and then started here at the hotel about 5.5 years ago now.
Good, wonderful. So a real mixed demographic here. Lots of different experiences that we can try and tease out for you today. Just first and foremost, I'll start with a bit of an icebreaker. If you could just have a show of hands for anyone who's been expected. It says here within the last month or so, Christmas has been and gone. If you've been expected to stay focused at work, or perhaps you felt quite low emotionally or physically, if you feel that resonates with you in the last 6 weeks, put your hands up. Okay, so half the room. And keep your hands up. So pop your hands up if you put them up. Keep your hands up if you didn't know what to do in that situation or how to improve that. Ben's put his hands down. Good. It's a good sign. It's a good start. Okay, so when we talk about being at your best in hospitality, what does that look like day to day? So if I could ask each of you just to give a sort of brief synopsis of what being best in hospitality or within the workplace looks like for you. So Sean, if we start with you, please.
Yes, I think for me, being like your best in hospitality day to day is now more so than ever. It's been calm. It's been respectful. It's obviously you've got a long list of jobs to do, but you get through them. But I think it's getting through those jobs in a way that's like sustainable. You're not stressed, you're not pushed so far that you're constantly at a cracking point. I think it's all about balance. I know for us at Avon, it's very much like we have music on. It's like there's no real sort of pressure to get set. It's like we always keep it nice and calm as possible, because I think I would be safe for myself. Sort of 4 or 5 years ago, I was completely the opposite. It was like very chaotic. I was like very scatty. I couldn't really sort of control my emotions very well. Which is why I've kind of gone on this whole sort of journey. But yeah, so for me now, it's very much about being calm, sustainable, making sure that everyone's well looked after. And that's what it should be day to day, is those kind of things. I tend to ramble, so you can definitely tell me to shut up. But I think one thing I would say is that, like, obviously there's this huge word at the minute, which is sustainability. And sustainability keeps going on about sort of food and all this other kind of stuff. But I think what we have to start doing now is like looking at the sustainability of its people. And that's the most important thing. I think like we keep going about sustainability, so let's now start looking at the sustainability of its people. Because if the job or what you're asking them to do isn't sustainable, then it's not ever going to work.
Yeah, a really great Really great point, and we'll delve a little bit more into that and what that looks like for you, and how you got to that stage as well. But you are right, we spend a lot of time with plastic or energy use, but actually what we're missing is the beating heart of the sector in the first place.
Yeah.
Without people, what have we got, right?
Yeah.
So next up, Julie, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree with all of that. I think, especially in kind of a kitchen sector, that it can be quite frenetic sometimes in the middle of service. So I think that calmness is really good, and I think our head chef here has definitely brought that calmness, and you can tell by the way that the staff feel that it's made a huge difference. And I think, kind of, I suppose, from a people perspective, it's setting that culture so that people feel free to talk about the concerns that they've got. Because feel free, if they are going through a particularly bad period, that they can talk to either their manager or they can talk to people in culture, whoever, that they feel that there is people there that they can talk to. So that it's all about us enabling the people to be the best versions that they can be when they're here. And I think it starts with the culture and that openness.
Yeah, and for record as well, so Sam, who has orchestrated all of our wonderful culinary delights today, was also walking a marathon, but not once did he complain. And in fact, when he finished, he asked if he could do it again. So, and then came in on Sunday to prep. So when he comes out, we'll have to give him and his team a huge round of applause. And lastly, what is looking and being at your best, whether that's hospitality or within your role as managing a huge company, look like?
I think it's listening. Firstly, it's listening, making sure you're listening to people, the team. We're lucky at Cornish Sea Salt. We've got some fantastic people in place. So it's that sort of an open-mindedness. I mean, some of the things which I find, bringing it back to me, but I find is that because we've been doing it now for 18, 19 years, we've made mistakes in the past. And although we've learned from mistakes, some of the new people coming through haven't necessarily seen those mistakes. And sometimes it's really good to point out those mistakes to people. And sometimes it's really good to sit back and either let them make a mistake or let them do it, because sometimes actually it works.
Yeah.
And actually it was a mistake 15 years ago, but it's not a mistake now. So I think just being the open-minded side of business is really good. Trusting the people you work with. Structure is another thing. Structure, making sure people understand what they're supposed to be doing, what's expected of them, and giving them feedback is something which we've, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've done a lot of work on. And it's made a huge difference where I'm a relatively chaotic person from the point of view, I like flitting in and out of stuff. And actually, we've got sort of, if you like, two different sides of the business. We've got the salt manufacturing, and then we've got the packing side. And for me, because I only have an attention span of a flea, I would quite like to be doing all these bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But actually, a lot of people in the business actually really like being wedded or structured to a particular process and like it. And actually, when you take them on the journey to show them other areas, that's fine. But actually, if you then want them to work for a week or two, actually they're missing their stage and they're feeling ownership of it. So I think it's, I mean, people are the core of the business in any business. And so it's making sure investing in them and listening to them and getting that feedback. We put out at least 2 anonymous surveys a year where we put it out there and just say, okay, what do you think? What we're doing well? What could be better? And also we talk about, what would you like to see in the business which you haven't got at the moment? Sometimes they're easy things like, fresh coffee or something like that side, and sometimes it's Lamborghinis and other stuff, which that's it. But it's again, it's picking things off each year and gently improving and listening to staff and making sure you're feeding that back through.
It's management of expectations as well, right? Because we'd all like to have a helicopter come into work every single day, but actually, is that viable and is that possible, right?
Yeah, not without lots of hair gel.
So Sean, obviously achieving Michelin star, the first in York, doesn't come without its pressures.
No.
Not just achieving it, but also maintaining that as well. And
Yeah.
what did that look like for you at the time in terms of that more chaotic period that you were in?
Yes, I mean, essentially, I suppose a bit of a background of how I kind of got there was, obviously, I'd moved across to the Black Swan at like sort of 23 years old. I started basically at the bottom. I was like basically a commis chef. And within 14 months, I basically went from being a commis chef to the senior sous chef at the Black Swan, which obviously a restaurant that's got a Michelin star. It has sort of 4 rosettes. So it was always like kind of really pushing. Off the back of Tommy doing sort of GBM and other things, it kind of went turbo, and then we opened Roots off the back of that. So I went over there probably, I think I was like 25 and I was like head chef there. So obviously 25 is obviously still quite young. So I didn't necessarily have any sort of management skills, which was part of my problem there. But when we opened, we were sort of this big sort of sharing plates restaurant, and then COVID hit, and obviously no one wants to share food when you can't even like look at each other without getting sick, kind of thing. So that's when we kind of changed it to right, we're going to go tasting menu. We wanted it kind of be different from the Black Swan, but it kind of twisted it around. We're like, right, let's go down the tasting menu route. So obviously we were kind of in and out of lockdowns whilst we were going through that, which was obviously mentally for me is very difficult because I need a focus, whether it's, well, obviously now sort of health and fitness as well, but like back then it was all about, I needed a focus, which was obviously work, which was kind of stripped back from me. And at the same time, then obviously we won a Michelin star, which was amazing. But at the same time, we won the star in January and we didn't reopen till the July. So I had a long period really of sort of 5 months really where I was at a bit of a loss and my mental health did take a massive sort of toll. So it was difficult because obviously I wasn't being able to do what I wanted. We'd also got this like massive thing, which was obviously York's first star. But because I couldn't actively find a focus, my focus then turned into basically like, how can I calm the sort of anxieties that I've got in myself, which was then led me on to drink, which was obviously a real easy thing to get hold of during lockdown, and I wasn't doing anything. Obviously gained a lot of weight. Obviously my mental health took a massive toll. But I'd kind of been going through that period for probably about sort of 2-3 years prior to that sort of build-up. And basically I'm pretty open, so I'm not going to hide anything. Basically, it got to a point where my mental health got so low and I was making loads of mistakes at work in sort of the way I was speaking to people, the way I was acting, you know, I was getting called out in it all the time. And I didn't really know, I felt lost in myself, I think. And I remember looking at myself at times when I came away from these situations where I'd snapped at somebody or been aggressive or whatever it was, I was like, that's not you. I was like, what's wrong with you? And I couldn't figure it out. I was at a real loss. And basically one night I knew that I was going out for, we call it Mad Friday back home. I don't know if you have that around here, but we call it Mad Friday, which is essentially like the Friday before Christmas. And basically I drank a load of alcohol. I went to a nightclub. We were coming back and I was like, right, this is the moment that I'm going to do it. And by do it, I mean, that's when I was going to take my life. So I kicked up a fuss in this taxi so that basically I knew that I could get out. And I knew that straight down this road was a train station. So I headed down towards this train station because I knew that there was going to be trains coming. And I was just at my lowest, and I rang up my partner Sam, and you know I was obviously crying on the phone. I was like, I'm really sorry, but this is what I'm going to do. I've been thinking about it for a while, and now is the right time. I'm really sorry. I love you. And then I hung up the phone, and obviously I sort of cried my eyes out, obviously down this road. Luckily, Sam was very clever and obviously knew who I'd been out with. So she rang my friends and was like, Sean said he's going to kill himself. Like, where are you? And they had obviously the rough location. Basically, as I headed down this road, luckily 3 or 4 police cars turned up and they put me in the police car and took me home. And I got home safely and then obviously woke up and then, yeah, sort of realised that there was obviously a huge problem. Bigger than I'd ever sort of thought. So off the back of that, I sort of went to therapy and stuff and tried to get help. But again, I think even when I went to therapy, I don't know if I was necessarily in denial because obviously I knew there was a problem, but I don't think I was ready to fully open to why certain things that had happened throughout my life had caused this to kind of. So I don't think initially I got sort of the real full benefit of it. So I went through a period where I got like super better and like my anxieties went down and like I wasn't snappy and I wasn't this. And then when it got to again towards the sort of getting the Michelin star, those things kind of came back in. And again, these sort of suicidal thoughts and this thought of like, oh, you're not good enough. Like everyone's looking at you, like thinking like, oh, like you shouldn't have got a star or whatever it is, you know, all these sort of negative thoughts. And I basically went through it again. And that was the point where I was like, I need to take a step back from this sort of high-end sort of fine dining thing. So I took a step back. I went to work for a friend for a few months, and then like now is completely different. Obviously meeting Ben's really like has changed my life. I would say that I kind of went into this whole health and fitness thing because essentially I wanted to lose weight, which I have done. I've lost 5 stone, so you can imagine how you'd have been a lot closer to me for a year. But I went into that because initially I just wanted to lose weight because I was like, it's going to make me feel better. But my mindset was it was going to make me feel better because I'd be skinnier.
Yeah.
But what I found with like the health and fitness and the nutrition and stuff is that like, I was like, oh wow, I was like, going for a walk is like really sorting my anxiety out. And I was like, I'm not snappy or anything. And like staff are coming to me, like, because obviously the restaurants kind of opened a similar time to when I started this journey. And they're like, you're a really good boss, you know, like you never lose your temper. And I'm like, like if you'd have come and seen me like 4 or 5 years ago, you'd have been like, what a knobhead this guy is. So it was like, yeah, like those kind of things have like changed my life really. And I think 5, 6 years ago, my way of dealing with stress was to drink, or it was to, you know, go out partying, and obviously we'll touch on it later, but obviously the things that affects. And it obviously took a massive toll, whereas like now it's all about like, my granddad died last year, and my normal way to deal with it would be just go out and get hammered, but I was like, I'm going to go for a walk, and I came back and it just gave me that time to sort of process it and understand it, and because I came back and I'd processed it and understood it a bit more, and I felt better in myself and clearer, then I ate well as well at the same time, and those sort of little things are just like make you feel better. So yeah, that's kind of how it came about really.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for sharing. 'Cause
Oh,
I know that, you know, we're not talking about a story or something that's happened theoretically here. This is a significant point in your life.
Yeah.
Sharing that is powerful. So yeah,
No,
thank
that's
you
all right.
for that. It's interesting. I was on the walk on the marathon. I met someone who worked in retail, and she was like, "Oh, hospitality is terrible."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Why? Why do you think that?" She was like, "Oh, chefs, they're always angry. You see it on TV." I was like, "Have you ever questioned why?
Yeah.
Like why they're angry, and if they even know that they're angry?" And you mentioned that emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
that pent up.
Yeah, and I think like for me, that's been one of my biggest regrets is how I acted back then. So all I can do, I can never put that right how I spoke to people at times, but what I can do is now is change, and I can be honest and open and be like, I was like that, and there is a way to get out of it, and there's a way to be better. Because I think like one of the problems I see is like I see all these interviews with like really famous chefs within the industry. I won't make any names, but you see these interviews and they're like promoting how they have this like healthy business and like how they're really good, and like I've got mates who work there and it's not like that.
Yeah.
It's absolute lie. And I think what we need is more people to come out and go like, I used to be like, sorry about my language, I used to be a knobhead. I've gone through this change. I want to make a change for the hospitality industry, and I think that's really important. It's no good just like sitting. I could sit here and just be like, yeah, I've been perfect my whole life, and you know I'm really calm and stuff. I'm like, well, I haven't been. So like, let's use that as like a thing to be like, there's a way to change and come out the other side, you know, and like let's promote that, and like, yeah, okay, the way I was back then isn't great, but the way I am now is great, and let's like get more people to be like, look at themselves and go like, yeah, the way I'm being is not acceptable. Like I need to change as well. Like how can I do that?
Yeah.
You know, because it is a how, and I think like one of the things with hospitality is like you're very young when you go into hospitality, and you can progress. I've progressed very quickly, and you learn all these skills on how to chop stuff, how to cook, how to. But no one ever really teaches you the management side of it and how to be like a normal, decent person sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think like you do need that sort of training to go like, yeah, like the way you've handled that isn't correct. Like you need to do it like this, and learn from it. And a lot of it is learning. And I think the problem is like I've worked for people that are super aggressive, and if you see that and you think that's like how it should be, you automatically do that. And you know, and I wasn't really, I guess, clever or intelligent enough to go like, no, that's not the way it should have been. It took like me getting called out on it before I was like, I need to be a better person. Do you know what I mean? And like my mental health was obviously suffering because I was like upsetting people I didn't want to upset. But in my head, it was all like almost like, you know, you read all these books from like obviously like Gordon Ramsay, Mark Up Here, White back in the day, and it's like it's all very much like service is service and outside life is different. And it's like, well, it shouldn't be like that. Just be like,
Yeah.
I remember Marco saying like, oh, it's better to be called a CUNT than to be ignored. And if that's like what we're sort of like reading and pushing onto the younger generation, they're going to think that's acceptable, and it's not.
Can we just give Sean a round of applause because he summarised it beautifully. We will dig into that a lot more, but yeah, honestly, perfect. Thank you. Philip, let's talk more about the physical and salt and sustainable performance side of things, if you feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. And just going back to Chris and Sean's point, just quickly, just the one thing which struck me the other day, and I saw it, it was actually, I think it was a guy that runs Bespoke, put it out there. And he said there's a difference between team and family, and getting the two confused is difficult. And I thought that was a really interesting point, which I hadn't actually, because it says Cornish Sea Salt to me is a family, but actually it's a team.
Yeah.
Because it's not a family. You got to be there performing at your best.
Yeah.
And people look after you. But if you're not performing at your best on that side, then it's not exactly the same as a family.
No.
So family can go and they can forgive you anything.
Yeah.
Whereas in a team is something where actually you're there to perform and work for. And I just thought that was for me, that was quite an interesting way of actually looking at different things. But
And families can be dysfunctional as well, right? It's like
they all are.
relying,
That's the one thing.
relying on this family dynamic is sometimes not the healthiest of ways of,
No.
you know.
What is this? As you grow up, you look at other people's families and you think, God, they're so normal. And then as you realise, when you meet everybody's families, you realise that there isn't a normal family. Everybody's unusual in themselves. But yes, salt. Sorry.
So
yeah.
talk about like salt and electrolyte balance, and especially in high pressure environments. I mean, we talk a lot about, you see a lot in the papers about performance sports and athletes being able to
Like
eat
performance
and
walking.
I'm still sore. It's too soon. But it is hospitality is a high performance sport, and it's high pressures, high demands, but it's also incredibly taxing on the body and the brain, and to the point where it's actually detrimental to health and life. So how can salt and electrolyte balancing help with that?
Yeah, it's hard to get into that. So if you take so salts are negative positive charged ions. The sea is full of different type of electrolytes, which when they bond together form salt. So negative positive, sodium chloride, magnesium sulfate, calcium chloride, all these different ions or electrolyte which bond together in the sea. So one of the things which gives us the clear indication that we evolved from the oceans is that all living things on the planet have exactly the same mineral profile of the sea. So you have all these different electrolytes, and then there are, we know that, we know about sodium, we've probably heard about potassium, magnesium, calcium, iodine, boron, all these different bits and pieces are in there, but they're all important to functions in the body. So they all have particular functions from the point of view of sodium. And sodium is something which we often think of as being incredibly negative, but sodium is one of the key electrolytes in your body. If you don't have sodium in your diet, which is quite hard to do, if you don't have sodium in your diet for 2 weeks, you're dead. And sodium is, if you think of salts as being charged particles and your body being an electrical system, which it is, all the neurons and nerve endings, all these bits and pieces effectively react. So you're all experiencing today and your life via electrolytes, via salts, because it's what's in the nerve endings, it's what's in the neurons, it's what fires those different components across. And hydration is obviously a very important thing. But one of the problems is in very high sort of either sport or kitchens where you're very hot, and we have it same at the salt plant. Our salt plant can be up to 45 degrees Celsius in the salt rooms, is that you sweat. So you use a lot of sweat, and you also, so when you sweat, you lose a lot of salt. When you urinate, you lose a lot of salt. And one of the issues is the amount of salt you lose. So these different electrolytes, these things which are so important from all the functions, from the point of view of heart function, brain function, that you're depleting them. So essentially your battery of salts is being depleted. The sort of the issue is of that is your performance goes down. But to take liquid back in again is quite challenging if you don't have salt. So if you're sweating like anything and you're losing the salt, you need to get the salt and the water back into your body. And there's a factor of 10. So you may sweat 1 milligram of salt per litre, and I may 10 milligrams salt per litre when we're sweating. So
Sounds like a competition.
it could be a competition, but it's set from birth. So what happens is from the point when you're born, or probably when you're in the womb, there's genetically you're disposed to how much actual salt you excrete. And this goes into quite a long conversation, but it's all to do with your genealogy and where you actually evolved from, whether you could effectively take on enough salt in your diet. So a very simple one is if you think of being in sub-Saharan Africa, and the person who's high performance has the right salt to them can get away from the lion, and the person who doesn't have it and isn't thinking clearly and hasn't quite got the sort of strength doesn't get away with it. So the person who excretes a lot of salt actually could be genetically in particular areas unable to perform as well as the person who's actually retained them. So there's another conversation which is all about sweat testing, which I'm not suggesting everybody in this room needs to do, but actually to understand how much salt you're actually losing. It could be smelly or not, but it's how much salt you're actually losing in your sweat is an important thing. So, so when you're taking salt back into your body, so you've sweated a lot, you've got rid of the salt, your body, because it knows that the salts are one of the most important things in there for your brain function, neurons, your nerve endings, your immune system, etc., etc., etc. When you're trying to take liquid back in, if you're diluting your 1% salinity more by taking more water in, it won't allow it back in. So effectively your system is closed and saying, you're saying, well, I have a big glass of water, I've just done a huge amount of exercise, I've sweated all this liquid and I sweated all these salts out. I need a glass of water. And your body, you put the glass of water in, your body goes, where's the salt? I can't take this. If I take any more water in, effectively what's going to happen is my 1% salinity is going to be 0.8%, which is dangerous for my brain and other body functions, so I won't take it in. So if you need to take, to take the water back in again, what you need is you need different salts in now. The two main ones are sodium and potassium. And sodium and potassium are interesting for a number of effects, but they are really important from a point of view of water balance, intercellular water balance. And if you're into sport, there's something called the sodium potassium pump, where effectively, if you want to take water back in again, you've got to have a potassium on one side and sodium on the other side of the cell wall to make it work. So by putting sodium potassium into your liquids or into whatever you're taking or drinking, you effectively allow your body to rehydrate. But if you just have water, your body will just go, look, I mean, think about, you're probably, you know those little sachets, if somebody's had really bad diarrhea and been ill, what happens is you have these little sachets which then go into liquid to then rehydrate you. They don't just say take some water because you'll be hydrated. It's the salt is as important as the water to get it back in again. And in a very simple thing, sodium increases blood pressure, potassium decreases blood pressure. Most processed salts we have, even if they're, a lot of sea salts you produce, are actually pure sodium with no potassium. If you have a balanced diet, so if you have food which is grown in really good soils, or shellfish and other bits and pieces which come from really good seas, or you use really good sea salt which has all these different minerals in, and actually your mineral balances you're taking back in is balanced. But if you have any one too much, so too much potassium is really, really bad for you. It's actually worse for you than too much sodium. If you have too much sodium, it's really bad for you because you get too high blood pressure. But if you have everything in balance, and that's the same with all electrolytes. So I think if you sort of look through magnesium, calcium, sodium, chlorides, and potassium to a point, are all really important for making brain function work. So brain fog, something you can get if you're highly stressed, if you're dehydrated, if you've got too much salt, if you've got too little salt, is something that happens because you're effectively, those neurons, those in connection between your brains aren't firing properly. They're not connecting. They don't have the right receptors to go through. So getting things in balance is important. And often that is just eating really good, healthy food. And if you are going to add salt, which obviously in our industry we do, add really good mineralized salts, something like Cornish Sea Salt or the French Gris salt, or these other bits and pieces which are mineralized salts. So they're not just pure sodium chloride. So there's no application to control a salt, if you like, sea salts out there, because it is just effectively, it's salt which is derived from the sea. It can be highly processed, and I'm aware we've got lots of things to talk through. So, but it's a really interesting subject. But the really good thing to do, if you wanted to sort of define different salts, is just taste them. Do taste tests for different salts. So take a tomato, cut them in half, take all the different salts out of your cupboard, put the salts on there, and taste is another thing which I'm not really talking about today, but have a go on that side. But yeah, but going back to it, electrolyte balance is really important for performance, brain function, mental health, all those other bits and pieces. But we are electrical systems. We are effectively neurons and all these different processes going from nerve endings. So making sure that your cables have got the right charge in them is important.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I've got a WI talk which goes on for about 2 hours, which includes the history of Salt Society, but that's not.
If anyone wants to listen to that talk, £100 donation. Phil's going to say behind our gallery Twitter. Honestly, incredible. So much information. Having experienced brain fog today, mainly because I got incredibly dehydrated and we burnt like 3,500 calories. Has anyone got any salt they can lob me? Actually, Julie.
Oh no, how am I going to follow those?
Hello. So similarly to me, you've worked in a lot of different environments, not just exclusively hospitality.
Yes.
And you've also trained, qualified as well in business psychology, etc. So what are some of the...
Years ago now.
But it hasn't changed. Like, it's like the mental health thing that I think the Michelin guide said it's a phase. It's always existed, and human psychology hasn't really changed much, and either as business. So what sort of things have you learned across not just hospitality, but also across the whole breadth of the work that you've done in terms of how we create sustainable cultures, but not just from a leadership perspective? What do we do to look after our teams to make those environments great?
Yeah, I think it is very much down to the culture of the organisation, and I think that absolutely comes from the top of the organisation. They have to believe in it, otherwise it's going absolutely nowhere. And that's across all different sectors. I think one of the things we look at is, are we just treating it as a kind of a tick box exercise? And undoubtedly there are some organisations that do that. Having said that, there are some I believe there are some fundamental things that every organisation should have, which is things like employee assistance programmes, occupational health, probably mental health first aiders now. I don't think any organisation can realistically justify not having qualified mental health first aiders in the workplace. So I think there are things that they are tick boxes. You need to have them. It doesn't make any difference, why or how, you just need to have them. But like I say, it goes back to the culture really. And I think what we try to do at Edgbaston Park Hotel is we try different initiatives. We're not kind of scared to do something that we find actually doesn't land, doesn't work. So we've done things like chair yoga, we've done walks, we've done mental health. We've got mental health first aiders that do drop-in sessions. But again, that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So we've also done the mental health first aiders doing podcasts and things like that. And it's kind of going back to what you said. They open up about their own mental health first aid experiences, and that really helps make that connection and really helps kind of the staff feel that they're comfortable. They're talking to someone that kind of knows potentially what they've been going through. So there's that. I think what's really important as well is accountability. So it's all very well doing these initiatives, but are the managers actually accountable for the well-being of their staff? So we make sure that we've got KPIs in place, in particular to do like employee engagement and things like that, where managers are held accountable for making sure that they keep on top of the well-being of their staff, and their staff are engaged, and their staff aren't working excessive hours, and the staff do feel like they're able to come and talk to somebody about their concerns and things like that. So yes,
A lot. There's a lot to unpack, and obviously legislation in the UK is changing, which means that employees, rightly so, have more rights, but it puts additional demands on organisations. And the things that you've mentioned, such as the mental health first aid, employee assistance programs, all of these are moving towards demonstrable approaches to be able to actually start to mitigate those and show that you're taking a responsible approach to looking after team members. And it's important to recognise that mental health first aiders aren't qualified therapists, right? So it's having that other signposting professional resources there to back them up.
exactly. And we do support with counselling, professional counselling as well. And that's probably one of the most important initiatives that we have introduced here. I think it's probably had the biggest impact on those individuals. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily cover a lot of individuals, but the impact it's had on the individuals that it has supported has been really, really big.
Yeah. And it's something that you said at the beginning, which is people have to buy into the culture. You can get a lot of tick boxing or stick a poster on the wall to say, yes, we are honest and transparent, but culture isn't a poster on the wall. It's actually what people demonstrate through their actions and behavior.
Those stay, yeah.
So if we connect pressure, nutrition, culture, and leadership, just in a very short sort of sentence or paragraph, like quick fire, what does good performance look like without burning people out? So Sean, if we start with you.
That's quite a tricky question. I think like good performance is sustainability, working as a team, and just being positive, I guess, is working together.
Yeah. Okay, Julie.
I think they're kind of interlinked, aren't they? Actually, looking after the staff should lead to them not being burnt out, and actually it can have that as a wellbeing strategy and a performance strategy. It's going to really positively impact. Sickness is going to go down. Hopefully, retention is going to be higher than it's not going to be high. So yeah, I think it has a. I think that sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I think that looking after the staff has a really positive impact on the performance.
Yeah, and commercially as well. I mean, we are talking about real life human beings here,
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
actually to run a sustainable business and an effective, commercially viable business, you have to look after
Expect treating everyone as individuals as well, because sometimes, again, organisations can just put out these initiatives. They don't affect that many people. You've got to try different things at different times and to different demographics. So like annual health checks will probably be more applicable to one particular demographic. Gym discounts will be more applicable to another demographic potentially. So I think it's always about thinking about who are the staff, what are their individual needs, and how can we support them with that.
And it goes back to what Phil was saying at the beginning, which is actually listening to the feedback from your teams, because it might be that actually people like communication, for example. Some people might still like a letter, like left in their pigeonhole, or whatever it might be. Other people might prefer digital technology or a different sort of reward system.
Yeah.
So,
I know you mentioned about, you don't like structure necessarily, you like flicking between things. I'm very much like that as well. But some people do like structure. And I think as leaders, it's up to us to kind of be able to identify what works for those individuals and adapt kind of their work, whatever that may be. It doesn't have to be a major adaptation, but it needs to be something potentially that's going to make them be more productive, but also support them with their well-being as well.
that's so true. And we've experienced that firsthand at Burnt Brunch. Emmy and I, when we started working together 5 years ago, Emmy is very much like me. Just sit me in a room all day and I'll create 4 or 5 different ideas and off we go. But as the team's grown, some people that's deeply uncomfortable for, and it puts them in a spin. So you have to find out how they prefer to work and work along that. So Phil, what about yourself in terms of how you tackle and identify what good performance looks like and make sure that people aren't burning out from the wrong types of performance?
Well, I mean, just adding on to that side, I think for us is probably for our side is looking at reviews. So, I mean, there's usual profitability and other bits and pieces, and we do a lot of continuous improvement within the business where we reward people for coming up with ideas of taking through. I think last year we took £450,000 worth of cost out of the business just by looking at ideas of how we can change things through. But I think it's very powerful to sit down with your line manager and say about what's going well and what's not going well, and get that feedback and take it through the business. But I mean, it's going back to the previous point. I mean, I was somebody who always presumed that I don't like praise. I don't like somebody coming up to me and saying, "Well done." That's really good. I find that embarrassing. It's like, somebody gives you £20 a year, no, that's fine. I don't want that with me. I don't like that. But other people really do, and actually want to know they've done a good job. And we've got this, I'll put it, a particular department in our business where we've got a WhatsApp group, and that WhatsApp group is constant, where they're constantly showing you what they've done. And it's a little bit like having, I think it's just a wrong way of saying it, but I will say it. It's a bit like having children, where some of that group you need to go, well done. That's really it's really good. And actually, you get the mindset. And eventually, you do get into it rather than going, God, okay, well done. That's really good. You've done your job. But actually, it's just as I say, treating people as individuals.
Yeah.
But giving them the feedback through. But I mean, for us, again, commercial business, it's again improving profitability. And getting a happy workforce, and a pasty Friday from now and again. Pasty Friday, you're amazing what a pasty Friday can do from the point of view of showing how well. And we often do that just almost as if we've had something really good's happened every pasty Friday. And I think feeding people, I mean, you're the hospitality business, so it's slightly different because you're feeding people all the time. But food is such a powerful thing to give gifts of food. For when we've done well as a company, okay, you can say, here's a bonus, but actually if everybody has food, and come through to the canteen, we've laid something on, actually that makes a big difference to how people feel.
With those social connections as well, doesn't inspire social thing.
I think to touch on that as well, like you do need to treat everyone as different individuals. Like obviously, like at the restaurant, we have a goal of where we want to take the restaurant, and everyone that comes in needs to obviously share that sort of same goal. But at the same time, I think for me, I always go back to them and see what their personal goals are, because obviously hospitality is like any business, is like people are at completely different stages within their life. So like we've got a young lad, Harry, who joined us last year from college, and his goal is to basically wants to go to Moore Hall to work. So I was like, right, okay, cool. Like, how do we get you there? And like, obviously, like it's going to be a big loss for us to lose him, but he came to me with that goal after I asked him, and like that's where we're going to get him to. So come the summer, he's going to Moore Hall to go and work there, and like that's his goal. And like I always say to him, like, you've got to come to me as well and tell me like what is you want to learn, what you want from me, and obviously I'll come back to you and I'll say like, I think you need to start doing this, this, and this. Whereas like Brett, who's obviously my sous chef, he's like 30, like sort of 37, and his goals are obviously like he's getting his own house. You know, eventually he'll look to get married. So I've got to go to him and be like, what are your goals within the business? And he's like, well, obviously at some point I'd like for you to almost take a little step back and let me run the kitchen. So like, that's where I've got to get him to. I've got to get him to where I am now, get him to there, so that then, because my goals is obviously like at some point I want to take a little, not step back, but I want to oversee the whole thing and just like, how can we make this better from the thing, which is very difficult for me to do when I'm constantly in the kitchen having to do prep. So you've got to look at everybody, and that goes for like the front of house team. You know, we've got some people that are full-time, got some people that are part-time, and you've got to see what their goals are. Like Sunuli, who we have working with her, she's unbelievable, and I wish she'd go into hospitality, but she doesn't want to do it. She wants to go into the ambulance service, but we have to see what her goals are while she's there. You know, like, do you want to learn about wine? Do you want to learn about like silver service or whatever it is, you know, and like see what she wants to do while she's there so that we can get the best out of her. I think like you said, like you don't like praise, like Sunuli's a person who like loves praise. Whereas if I go to Brett and praise him, he looks at me like, shut up. And you have to treat people as individuals to get the best out of them. You know, some people need an arm around them. Some people do like you to sort of push them and, you know, come on, let's go. But you have to treat people as individuals. There's no one way, you know, like I think like going back to before, like there's always been this sort of thing of like, yeah, you go into a kitchen, like you get a bollocking and then like you learn from it. It's like that is so old school now. It's like, yeah, some people might get a vibe from that, but like the majority of people, like they need you to sit them down and talk to them on a human level. And like you said, sometimes you've got to let them make a mistake. And like, there's sometimes where there's like a little thing I like, it's not going to affect service. I'll let it happen, and then you got to be like, maybe like kind of do it like this. So like if there is a major mistake, the last thing they need is you to go in on them, because they're just going to make more mistakes because they feel worse. So like what I tend to do now is the mistake happens, I sort it out, and then I'll go to them quickly about, look, we're back on track now, blah, 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 and I don't say any more. But what I'll do then is like after service, I'll sit them down. And what I always do is I do it in 3 stages. So I'll start off with something really positive, then I'll go into the negative thing of what's happened, and then I'll finish on a positive. So you start them off, they're feeling a bit more positive. Yeah. Then you've got to go in with the negative. It's like, you know, like we can't do that. But then you go like, but you know, you're doing this really well. Like, let's keep going. And they always will kind of walk away and like, they're like, all right, cool, yeah. And they come back in the morning and they've got more energy about them, because if you end it on a negative and then they go home, there's oh God, like, yeah, I've just been told off and I feel rubbish. And I think, yeah, and I think sometimes, like, one thing I've had to learn to do is, like, remember how those sort of bollockings and tellings off felt for me at the time. And none of us really enjoy to do it. Like, there's the odd time where it might spur you on a little bit, but 9 out of 10 times it doesn't work. And you've got to remember, like, how did that feel for me and how can I do it differently so that they don't feel like how I did.
It's that empathy, isn't it? It's connecting with that experience. Yeah.
Giving them the respect.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's really refreshing to hear this. I mean, this is what we've worked so hard for 7 years, right? And you've come through this on your own journey and through your own way, but actually we're starting to see like real meaningful change in hospitality. We're starting to see massive perspective and culture shifts and more strategy. Yeah, it comes down to this, not just from looking after culture and protective mechanisms, but also how people are looking after themselves and how they're feeding and watering themselves. I know we're running over just a little bit. Are we on time? We're on time. Brilliant. We're going to open this up to Q&A.